to get the most rather than the best out of people. Tell us, if you will, much of what you do, as you started off, is working with leaders, and often it's someone new to the position or maybe someone who's maybe stuck in a certain gear. Tell us, if you would, about some of the common things that happen, some of the things that somebody has to let go of if they're moving into a leadership position, and how you as a coach might help them.
Well, I think it's kind of what we touched on before. One of the hardest things to realize is that what got me where I am is not going to get me to the next level or often keep me where I am. And what I see often with new leaders is that the reason why they've gotten into that position usually is because they've done the work harder, faster, and better than everyone around them. And so they've done that over and over again, and they've come up through the ranks, and then they get into this true leadership position where it really isn't about doing it. You know, leadership, I believe it's more of an art. It's not like you would say, paint that watercolor harder, faster, and better than the person next to you, and it would be. There's skill involved, there's vision involved, and there's a different kind of touch. So a leader, I think, has to learn different skills, and not just learn different skills, but let go of the ones that got him or her where he or she is. And that's really difficult to do. Plus, one of the things that I try to work with my leaders on is that they have to have a level of vulnerability that a lot of them have not yet been comfortable having. And so if they're going to create trust with the people that they're leading, trust and vulnerability really do go hand in hand. And if they can't be vulnerable with the people that they're leading, then there's always going to be that sense that the people around them can't be comfortable. I think that's one of the things we often work on. I mean, the common thing from executive level leaders that I see across the board is this idea that if they don't do the work or watch the work or see the work, that how do I know for sure the work is going to get done? And to let go of that idea that it has to be done in a certain way in order for it to be right. And that just takes a lot of trust of the people around you. And it's hard to build trust without relationship.
Boy, that's a great way of thinking about it. Tell me, Janae, as you're explaining this, a lot of people think of the Caliper profile primarily in the hiring process, but I know you've incorporated the insights that you gain from the profile and working with Caliper consultants here into your coaching. Can you give me some examples of how that has worked for you?
Well, sure. My very favorite way to use Caliper is with executive leaders that are in my high-impact leadership sessions. And I usually do these sessions with an executive leadership team, so anywhere from 6 to 12 people that are in a company that are the highest level of leadership that are all trying to, break through to the next level. So I'll go into a company, and we will set up a number of sessions together, and we will meet on this regular basis. And one of the things we do is I Caliper test all of them before our first session. And Caliper does a couple things for me. Number one, it makes me look like a genius, which I love. So I'm able to go in there with a pre-understanding of tendencies of the whole group. And that helps a ton. I mean, when I talk with my Caliper consultant and let me know, like, individuals, what they might be thinking and how they're feeling. So there's a group I'm working with right now that have two characteristics that going into it I realized I had to change the way I was going to approach them. One was, as a group, they are consistently low in empathy. So knowing that going in, I know that that's one of the things that we're going to need to work on. It also gave me a context in which to understand a lot of the feedback and a lot of the frustration. So when they've talked in the past about feeling blindsided or feeling like we thought we made a good decision, we rolled it out, everybody was on board, and then suddenly, to their way of thinking, out of nowhere, people weren't on board anymore. Well, I realized then that they've lacked the ability to read those subtle cues. And so I knew that going in. They're also very high in urgency. Knowing that as a consultant going in is really important because I know I need to keep things moving. They're going to get bored quickly. We're going to jump around. I need to be ready to do that. I have my own Caliper test and my own results. So having that with me and knowing that, okay, this group is maybe really detail-oriented and I know that I'm not, I can go in there and realize that I need to be really intentional about letting them know what we're doing ahead of time. Things like that. That's how it's really helps me understand the group, even before I even get in front of them.
So it helps you to understand how to communicate with them more effectively, as well as what is driving them and what could be falling through the cracks for them.
That's where it helps me. You know, what they will say is that it just seems like she knew us from the first day. And it's like, well, I did. I mean, basically, I sat down and went through your family pictures and talked to your mom. I mean, that's what it feels like to them, that I just know everything about them. And that can be a little bit disheartening for some of them, or curious. But overall, it really just cuts out a lot of the gobbledygook for me, because very quickly we're able to build rapport and trust and really get down to the nitty-gritty on the stuff we need to work on. And then for them as a group, what I've seen over and over again is that it gives everyone a common language without labeling them. So the thing I love about Caliper is that it doesn't turn people into like a green hippo or a yellow polywog or a ENFP. You don't have a label, and instead it's just, this is your profile and these are your preferences, and it allows my leaders then to be individuals and to concentrate on what they need to grow and develop, rather than to concentrate on, well, what's it like to be a yellow polywog, or who else in the room is a green hippo, and you can get pulled down into that labeling. So I love that. And then it increases their vulnerability. We talked earlier about vulnerability in relationship, and one of the things I've seen over and over again is people hold their results real close to their chest. But then as the discussion goes on, they start comparing and laughing and looking, and when they realize they have something in front of them that explains them, suddenly it's like, look, this is me, and they start sharing that with people that maybe they've had some frustrations with, and I start hearing things like, well, no wonder we irritate each other when we're in a meeting together. And it's done in a very non-threatening and lighthearted and healthy way. I mean, that's why I love it. It really allows me to skip ahead and to get to the real stuff sooner.
Well, I'm sure as you're describing this, Janae, I'm sure so much of how much your coaching sticks has to do with how open and how committed that leader is to changing, and change can be very difficult. Tell us, if you will, maybe you can use an example about when someone wants to change, what is it that they have that helps get them through?
Change is hard. What I've found, unfortunately, is that most of us don't want to change. We want the results of having changed, but we don't actually want to change. Like, I want to cross the finish line. I don't actually want to do the 6 months of training beforehand. So I think change happens a couple of ways. Sometimes it's when my current situation becomes so intolerable that the fear of change is not as scary as the current situation. I think the sign of a mature leader is one that makes changes not based on how bad my current situation is, but on how great my future situation could be. I have this great leader that I've worked with for a number of years, and he's one of these guys that just has been phenomenal, not because of the raw ingredients necessarily, but because he wants so badly to change and be a healthy, mature leader. And so I can work with that forever because it's someone that wants to do things differently. And he's the guy that would, for a number of weeks and months as we worked together, the first step was realizing that the evidence of doing it wrong, quote unquote, and then the next step was he was able to see it coming up. Like, okay, here's this situation, and in the past I would usually do this thing, I'm going to try to do this other thing, and then he would get waylaid in between. But it eventually got to a point with him where he could see that, okay, I'm internally reacting this way because of this certain thing, but I know that it's going to be better if I react this other way. And he could do that during the situation. And now, I mean, the people that he leads will tell you he's tender and caring and empathetic, and he listens, and they feel included, and he develops people better than probably any other leader I know because he's been there and he's gone through it. It hasn't been easy, and it's taken him a number of years to get there, but he's just one of the most vibrant leaders I know.
That's marvelous. It's been just a great joy and a great pleasure talking with you.
Well, thanks, guys, so much.
Janae just blows me away, Eileen. It's amazing to hear from people who truly understand the capabilities of the profile. And she uses it before she puts herself in front of a group, and then again when she's analyzing a group to see who fits where. Now, from a manager's perspective, they look at a top performer and they say, okay, he or she is stepping up to the plate. They seem to be ready for the next career move. And the individual might say, okay, I'm going to give this everything I have because I want to move to the next level.
And what the next level is really should be a conversation. The next level doesn't have to be the managerial role. We tend to think of things in companies and in bureaucratic environments in a very hierarchical way, where, okay, if I'm good at something, then the next step, the next level is managing other people.
Right.
Well, managing is a whole other set of behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to look at your organization and say, are there opportunities for people who are strong individual contributors to advance their careers without having to take on the responsibilities of managing or leading other people, because that may not be where their greatest strengths are. It might be, and if it is, that's great. But if it isn't, is there a career path, an advancement path for someone who is going to be your best accountant? But you really don't want them managing people because they're not going to like it. The people who are going to work for them are not going to perform at their best because they're not going to feel like this person is effective at managing or coaching them. And you've now set this person up, and you set other people in your organization up for failure because you thought you were rewarding good performance.
That's a very important observation, and really it might come across as a challenge in many ways to some of our listeners to think about a promotion as not just being moving into a management position, but can you create within your own organization the idea that someone can continually be promoted as an individual contributor, if that makes sense, or into management, if that makes sense.
Right. And in technical organizations, there may be more leeway for that, more room for that than we've traditionally seen in other types of organizations. You've got engineers or technology professionals or accountants or things like that who are very technically oriented. They can move up a ladder, so to speak, based on their demonstrated technical expertise and competence to the point where they're, a senior engineer.
So the profile results can certainly help you think about the right person to promote, narrow down that decision. If we're looking into moving someone into a management position, what are some qualities you would be looking for, particularly since they might not have been demonstrated before?
Right. Well, you want to look for strong communication skills. You want to see that somebody is assertive and is able to provide direction to people in a direct and straightforward manner, not in a reactive or emotional manner. I think that that's very important. You want to see some resilience. You want to see people who can take a hit because, let's be honest, in management, you're going to take a lot of hits, and you've got to be able to bounce back from adversity, maintain your composure in difficult situations, not take it personally, not take it out on your employees. So I think that resilience is a big key. We look for people who are achievement and action-oriented, who have a strong sense of urgency, who are willing to take some risks, who are willing to drive people in a positive way to achieve their best. I always look for at least a moderate amount of empathy, somebody who is capable of seeing a situation from another person's point of view, especially if they're going to be expected to coach and develop the employees who work for them. And then finally, I think you want somebody who is not going to be overly accommodating, who's not going to be so concerned with what other people think of them that they're not willing to hold people accountable when the time comes to do that, and aren't going to be afraid to have